Excellent. So, yeah, Remi Duquette. I'm the global head of Data Center Clarity LC, based in Montreal. Work for a company called Maya Heat Transfer Technologies, and we develop a DCIM solution. So today, though, the big idea that we've been investing a lot in the last couple of years is on deep learning, and I'll make a bold statement that you will all have deep learning in your data centers if you don't have them by now. Within the next 3 years, for sure, you're going to have some deep learning and some machine learning. We're not going to call it AI, although you could call it AI for augmented intelligence and not artificial intelligence, because I don't think we're there yet. And the big idea would be to combine deep learning algorithms and combine it with a drone to automate your inventory. So I've struggled for a long time to figure out how to help my clients to onboard, data center infrastructure management. The first piece of it is to actually, run the inventory and start the project. So that's the big idea. Use a drone, fence it with a wire mesh so it does not interrupt on any, danger zones or anything, and combine it with deep learning so you can just automatically get your full inventory and 100% accurate and dynamic. So as things change, your inventory keep changing. That's it.
Thank you, Ren. Well, let's blow this one apart. A drone in your data center. You'll be talking about water next. God, crazy. Has anybody got any, any pros and cons to talk about that one?
It's brilliant. Plus, plus then you could use it as input to your CFD model, because it'd be obviously bumping all around on the air currents that would be floating around in your data centers. Right? Yeah. I think this is brilliant. Or is this kind of like improv where you say yes to everything?
Valentin, over to you.
Since I have the mic, so ironically enough, I also grew up in Montreal, but now I'm over in the San Francisco Bay Area. My idea is a bit more abstract. It's not necessarily a DCIM solution. It's around the concept of less is more, inspired by GDPR and right to be forgotten concepts. So my idea is around breaking the tension between protecting data against all the epidemic of breaches we see right now. I think the default assumption for all of us is data has been breached, personally and organizationally. That's the adult conversation about data management and security. But how do you balance that with attention against, not being a dinosaur and not fully exploiting your data and exposing it to really brilliant data scientists and analytics folks and monetizing data? That's a board level pressure as well. So my idea is around the fact that, there's platforms, data sharing platforms available right now that should be able to give you visibility into not just the first copy that's downloaded, but every copy that's downloaded. So you have visibility into all your critical data and how it's being used. And our notion is that you can't manage what you can't see, so you have to have visibility of all data, but you also don't control what you can't revoke. So data sharing should have the option of taking all copies back in case your boss says you shouldn't have shared that data. And so that's really my big idea is the concept of revocable data in a data sharing platform, balancing the tension between monetizing it and protecting it.
Next, you'll be telling us that blockchain's important in this. Yeah?
That's an underlying implementation detail I don't lead with.
Well, we've been hearing a lot about blockchain in the last 2 days, still trying to work it out. Anyway, I think it's someone's big idea. Okay, so would anybody like to comment on that one? Anything funny to say about that? Revoking, sending things and then pulling it back, and oops, I shouldn't have sent that. No instances where that's happened. Okay, that's okay.
Change their mind.
No one likes to change their mind, but at the moment the drones, that was sexy. I'm just saying that. Anyway, Mark, let's go on to you.
Right. Well, so a concept that I've talked about with others, from time to time, is the idea of us stopping producing dumb electrons and only produce smart electrons. And that is to put data centers close to power generation plants so that number one, we shorten the distribution losses. Number two, we get the benefit of combining services like security and protection. Number three, The lines that go out of the power system are much smaller because we're sending out pieces of emails and pieces of weather analysis, and every electron that goes out is smart. It's been processed already, rather than send the dumb electrons to the data center to get smart and then come back to the users. And it turns out that most of the heat engine type of power plants, where they're burning something, producing steam, and then expanding it to make power, can use almost any kind of heat, including the low-grade heat that comes off of data centers, in their reheat, in their steam reheat cycle. When they go down below atmospheric pressure, the temperatures get low enough that our heat is valuable, and they'll take every bit of heat that they can get, especially free heat that comes off of the data center. So there's a great synergistic type of environment that could end up being a part of data plants.
Can we explore the flaws quickly? What challenges are standing in your way of this nirvana?
Mostly the utility companies, because it takes them about a half of a century to react to an idea. So, in the U.S., I should say, in the U.S., it takes a very long time.
Lucky we spun up the energy smart discussion.
Yeah.
You were there at WebScale, weren't you?
Yeah.
So Marima's got an energy smart discussion going on, a European style.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to compare the two, the antiquated with the new.
That's it. Yeah. You mean the Americas in the UK?
The antiquated Americas.
Right.
No. We're pretty antiquated as well. I was thinking about the Northern Europeans, actually. They're generally bright as a button. Peter.
I think it's a great idea. I think that the best thing of you don't have much higher reliability, you don't need infrastructure, you don't need UPS, you don't need generators. The single biggest problem about this big idea is the fact that it's been done already.
Yeah.
Base layer is doing this. They're connecting directly to the transmission line.
Yep.
They were able to achieve some really successful installation. They took care of the fault current problem. So it's, I think that it's going to grow. I think it's an excellent
And there was
idea.
a startup in the U.S. that tried to do this outside of Philadelphia, right? The data centers, and they tried to get approval for both a power plant and a data center. And the community said, no power plant. We're not letting you build a power plant.
That was TDC, right?
Yeah.
TDC, yeah.
Well, technically, isn't Bloom Energy doing that? You put a fuel cell next to your power generation, are you? Okay, David, nothing about water.
Nothing about water.
Liquid
So
even.
here comes the crash and burn. So yes, liquid cooling. So my idea is actually is the crash and burn one. My idea is that we should make things really, really dull. I think we've got some really big challenges coming. We've got loads of people moving to cities, density, power, challenges of proximity. Proximity is going to be a major, major issue and competitive advantage for people coming. And I think there are huge issues that come in processing. Processing is going to start to be just an enormous factor in the data center. And they're all things you can't control. They're things that are happening, and it's going to just put so much load on the way that data centers do things today. I think the real challenge for companies like mine, and that we've stepped up to do here, is to try to deliver systems in such a way that they're really quite dull. You don't need to change your business process. You don't need to change the IT you use, but you can have distribution straight to the point of where the power is. You can be silent. You can be in the cupboard under the stairs. You can have your data centers wherever the hell you need them to be. And I think so my big idea is actually to make you have perfect control of the world that you've got, despite not being able to change the challenges that exist that come to you from the outside.
Slightly philosophical, you know.
Well, we've got some upstairs that we could show you.
Well, you've been hiding it upstairs. It's hardly fair. It's upstairs in a corner room.
So come and talk to me.
I'm not a buyer. Now, interesting. Does anybody remember the French startup Quano? No? It's not ring a bell? Oh, that was an interesting one. Marima? Carno, that's it. It was they had radiators in homes. Yeah, and they had the motherboard, and then they were processing a big data application, and it was pushing out the heat, and it was. Does anybody know where that went? Because that got money, didn't it?
I think the challenge they had was that they were really dealing in very, very small kilowattage. That they ended up you could heat a small corner of a small room.
They got very small rooms in Paris.
Well, they have.
They cut them
but
all up, didn't they? So it's fit for purpose.
I think the real thing that we've managed to do is to get really, really simple scale. IG level scale all the way down to single server stuff, and to do so really cost effectively. I mean, we're seeing, Kevin Brown talked about our stuff the other day. We were seeing 30-40% TCO, so it's there, it's scalable, it's deliverable, and it's clean. It's really, we can do that. So we can give that, as I say, you might have exciting problems to deal with here, but we can actually make the solution to it.
For a big
reassuringly
ideas panel, though, David, we need to kind of like put it in a nice package, because like we started off with you, Remi, and we had a helicopter, a drone, didn't we? So, and Quano, they had a nice little radiator, and I could embellish that, a radiator with a radio. Imagine that, the power. So you could have a radio and heat your room and crunch data at the time. Can you just embellish?
I'll put an
yours?
MP3 player on the outside of mine if you want. That's not a problem.
That's pretty
you know.
cool.
We
That's
could do
pretty
that.
cool. Well done. That's where we're going. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Peter.
My name is Peter Gross. I'm with a company called Bloom. The best thing about my big idea is that it's not my idea. You look at where we are as a society and mankind. There are not that many frontiers left, right? We had sent someone on the moon, and we sequenced the genome, and we know what it's under the water in the oceans. There are only two frontiers left, essentially. One is the universe, the space. It's going to take a long time to really conquer that. And the one which is much closer to all of us is the human brain.
What's inside Tomo Masaki's head? Oh, no. Oh.
That's dangerous.
Oh, he has a brain here with him?
No, it's AI.
Oh, yeah, right.
Cloud.
Cognitive science.
So, we've been talking about AI here, and we all heard about Elon Musk saying that the greatest danger to mankind actually is AI and robots. Before we get there, mapping the human brain is the next big thing, at least in my opinion. And it's interesting that we as a have evolved so much, and we learned so much. And in spite of that, we know so little about the human brain. We don't even know how many type of cells exist in the human brain. And inventorying the human cells in terms of location and genome sequence and shape, and that's one big initiative that essentially is starting to take shape now. And the other one is, there are 85 billion neurons in the brain, and mapping the connection between them, and essentially through a small electric shock energizing each one, and then mapping up all the connections. That will lead us to machines that will be not as smart as George Rockett, but close enough. Yeah. So that's where I think that will be the next big frontier for mankind.
Just on that, though, that took me on to, you mentioned the genome, the Wellcome Trust, the Sanger Institute. Just taking it as a little anecdote. Phil Butcher, he's the guy, isn't he? I remember that. 2001, they built a data center, and there was no raised floor, and everyone said, it's ridiculous. So they're quite progressive, that lot, aren't they, the healthcare lot? Be interesting to see what they do. We should write an article on that, Marima. Healthcare and how they're going to map the human brain with a supercomputer.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Rhys.
Hi, I'm Rhys Jones. I work for i3 Solutions. My big idea, rather in a timely way, is we've got Peter and Mark here, and we've been discussing DCERN, the Data Center Incident Reporting Network. One of the main things that sticks in my mind as part of the original brainchild behind DCERN was Ed's view that at some point data center going down could potentially kill somebody. And the notion that there's that much responsibility. In recent times, there's been an overall commoditization of data centers. We've driven the industry very much towards energy efficiency. We've tended to take a little bit of a compromised view on resilience and redundancy. And we've also become significantly sort of more progressive in the way that we use smarter type infrastructure in data centers. And really the idea is, I guess, a challenge to the industry to rethink the way in which we term data center infrastructure in terms of its resilience and redundancy, particularly with regard fault tolerance, because we are actually pretty poor compared to other industries in terms of having fault-tolerant software and firmware. It's within the last few weeks, a data center went down as a result of a chiller system being loaded up with exactly the same firmware. We don't have a tendency to think about whether or not we, in a 2N solution or distributed redundant, actually split out different vendors to move away from common mode failures. And if the actions being, or processing being undertaken by a data center is to be that important, and we are going to be a mission critical processor of data in the same sense of mission critical industries such as nuclear or aviation, then a entirely different approach needs to be taken to how we define fault tolerance.
Okay, so the big idea is the redefinition of fault tolerance for the modern world. Okay, so we've had these ideas. I want to just go off on a slant for a little bit. Please feel free to go and get a drink from the bar. I believe it's free at the moment. Is it a free bar at the moment? Yes, it's a free bar at the moment. So just, you know, I know this is scintillating. Everybody's really engaged here. And I don't know what we're going to say next. But before we go in for the voting and the recap, and I might have forgotten some, so I'll need some help. Just want to take from each of you a takeaway from the last 2 days. You're all very smart people. You've all been here. You've engaged with the audiences and with people. Is there one key thing you picked up that you didn't know when you got here, or a piece of information that you hadn't synthesized properly that you'd like to speak back to the audience? And can we start at the end with you, Rhys, and work back? I like the boomerang, like the data boomerang thing. I want to bring it back.
Yeah, absolutely, George. Ultimately, I think for me, having this is the 10th year that I've attended DCD, it's just really, more than anything, keeping an open mind. I mean, every time I come back, I'm presented with something that's new and challenging. I guess fundamentally just sort of embracing the notion that every day is a school day.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I think that you're doing a decent job. You can do better. But I think it's what I like about DCD is that it really identifies the major trends in this business and is pretty responsive. I really like the session, the longer session about OCP. I think that it's a big thing that will reshape this industry, and the focusing and having a full afternoon session on OCP was very smart, as opposed to having a short presentation, and being responsive to the developments in the industry, and being able to develop a forum on this kind of are discussed. It's what makes this conference better than all the others.
Can I ask you, just on that point, if you could encapsulate how you think OCP will change industry? Is there a short way of saying that? Because it's something that's been about for a couple of years now. People have bought in. We hear sometimes there are projects, there aren't projects, but it seems to me like it's a movement. But
well, I think that I'm sure that most of you have started to see this trend in the industry. We're going away from the centralized power cooling. It's going closer and closer to the rack, both in terms of differentiated and individualized cooling, and Same thing with power, OCP, and Open 19 will have a major contribution there. I think that software-defined power, virtualized power if you want, all these things will totally change the way we operate the data centers. The traditional architecture that it was so prevalent for so many years, it's going away, and that's the only way we can rapidly respond to changes in technology. This is the only way we can really scale up and modularize the critical support infrastructure in the data centers, and integrating software and power and cooling requires that kind of response. You cannot just cool a 100,000 square foot room with chillers and air handlers. That's not effective. Delivering power at that level, it's with a big UPS system, it's not efficient. So that's why OCP, and OCP it's a lot more than just power, obviously. And but ultimately the objective is to improve performance, reduce consumption, improve efficiency, and reduce cost. That's what everybody's looking for.
Great, thank you very much for your insight, Peter. David,
So
a takeaway. What you come, you didn't know, and you've learned.
So my takeaway is somebody who's been kind of stuck in a private room for the whole of the 2 days. Is actually, in terms of the people in the industry, we've had a lot of different people in, being consultants, being OEMs, being data center operators, owners, colo, everything. Has actually been the incredible generosity of time that people have been prepared to give, the quality of mind share and thinking. We've had some really incredible meetings, and even in the respects where people are looking at something and saying this is not for me, I think actually there's been just that incredible spirit of, but I could see how this could work, and I could see how you could do this. So I've been really impressed actually that people are here not for a jolly or not just to sort of have a look at the shard, but genuinely to engage, genuinely to seek, genuinely to be informed, and I think with that to share know-how and share learning. So it's been an incredibly informative experience. But I think I'm actually an investor and director in a few different companies and sectors and industries, and I found it pretty unique actually for this sector that there was that, there was a real homogeneity of that kind of generosity of spirit that was in people to give quality time, but to share and to learn and genuinely want to actually improve things for customers, and actually to do things for the right reasons. I thought that came across really powerful.
Well, that's a big slap on the back for everybody here. So yeah, well done.
So thank you.
Mark, you go to events around the world.
Yep.
You know everybody.
Well, not as many
Really?
as Tom does, but
No, but nearly. Is it possible? And this is interesting. When you go to so many events, is it possible to learn a new thing?
It is.
Have you learnt something
did.
new yesterday or today
Yeah.
that you can say?
Well, so one thing that comes to mind right away was I was very pleased, especially coming from a country that's turning our back on the Paris Accord, that sustainability and conservation were still very topics that were in vogue here. They had a number of sessions that were about energy efficiency and sustainability, and it's good to see that the rest of the world is keeping their eye on the ball, even if we're stepping back a little bit from it in the United States, and not all of us are, but certain people are. And so that was very encouraging. And the other thing was that we're in an environment of constant change, and that the business, everybody knows that the business is just going crazy. The hyperscale companies are growing so fast that we almost none of us can keep up with them. The rest of the industry is growing quickly. The people that support all that stuff, and we still have an environment of uncertainty here in terms of what the real impacts of things like GDPR and Brexit and those kind of global political and regulatory changes are going to make. And I think that's the way it's always been in the industry. Is we're hurtling along, just trying to keep up with the the next Facebook or the next application killer app that's going to drive the data to the things that we are. And we know that just out of our reach right now are autonomous vehicles and AR and VR and giant 5G and things that'll change the industry dramatically. But we're still plugging along, and that was encouraging to see that everybody's figuring these things out in a short time frame.
Cool. Valentin, your takeaway. What did you learn in the last 24 hours?
Building on top of what Tom just said, it's not necessarily something new, but I've been around this industry long enough to always know that there's a constant pendulum swing between centralized and sort of edge computing. And the pendulum is really starting to swing back right now. So I think at the same time as we're seeing massively profitable earnings results from the hyperscale cloud vendors, here, more than anything, I'm seeing a cementation of the pendulum swinging back. And beforehand, it would have been just generalized edge computing and remote sensors, but with the pending, release of 5G networks, with driverless cars, and back to blockchain, everything is about blockchain, right? Decentralization of computing, I think, is one of the most important trends we have to look at here. One of the sponsors, EdgeConnects, I think is on the forefront of really looking at the notion that we're no longer going to build bigger and bigger centralized computers somewhere in the middle of nowhere near a waterfall or a power plant. We're going to have more distribution of processing, more distribution of data management, in my world, closer to the user. We all know that, for many use cases now, latency is everything. Speed of light is something we haven't figured out how to change yet. And so we're going to have to respect, I think, the latency requirements more and more for these next generation of applications. So the big thing for me is the pendulum is swinging back away from centralization.
Concise, you nailed it. Thank you, Valentin. Remi, last but not least.
Last but not least, so the one thing that I, as a takeaway, would be, as I discussed AI and how AI ready people are, I looked at the importance of, or I was reminded of the importance of interactivity between the human group that will interact with that AI, either to train it, to use it, to leverage it, to mentor it. So if there's one takeaway, was that reminder that in the end, we're all going to interact with these different types of AI, and I think the interactivity between humans and AI is a key thing that we can't forget in the equation and just build AIs for AIs.
Okay, thank you very much. In the room, who's at the moment currently that sees that AI is right ahead of them? Can I have a show of hands? They're thinking about projects that are using some form of AI. Anyone? Yes? Yeah? Okay, anyone? Well, that's a good question, because we listen all the time in the conference to different people. We got different levels. You had Scott Noteboom today talking about DAC and other people. And it's there, and sometimes you look around and go, is this happening? And it's just interesting to take a check. We know that it goes very fast, right? We might ask that question in a year's time and every hand goes up because they've got that they're actually using it already. Okay. So the point of this was to have a quick judging contest. Now let's see if I can remember. Okay, in one, we had Remi with the drone asset manager of the data center, the Buzzy drone. In two, with AI. Of course it had to have AI. It's probably got blockchain. And then we had Valentin with his boomerang data, probably with some blockchain around it. Bring that back and check that it was the one that you'd sent out there in the first place and not someone else's copy. Perfect. Mark, you're going to have to help me on your one. It was smart electrons. Goes over my head a bit, but sexy title. I like it. All right. Then we had the ultimate edge inside everything, right? That was yours, David.
Mine was keep the future really dull.
It was keep the future dull.
Dull the edge.
Dull edge. You are not going to win.
I know that. But you know what? I might sell a lot of stuff.
You're not going to win, though. You've got to be in it to win it. We had Mapping the Human Brain from the eminent Mr. Gross. The next frontier. The final frontier. Until a new edge is found. And we had Rhys, which was completely changing the way we're looking at availability as an industry, which is a big, far-reaching one. So those were the 6 ideas. So I know It's difficult, but I've got to get you like whooping or clapping. All right? Come on. Half of you in suits. I don't expect you to, but those that are dressed down, maybe we could get you into it. And don't steal all the thunder, Tomo. Okay, number one. Can we have a little clap with the thing? That's the one. The drone in the data center. Okay. Boomerang data. Okay, no, it's still staying here. Okay, it's still staying with you, Remi. Okay, the positive electron, the smart electron. No, Remi, you still got it. The drone has still got it.
It's not over yet. It's not over yet.
The dull future, edge, dull. You did that just to be controversial, didn't you? So I'm still not there. Mapping of the human brain as the final frontier. You got a whistle. You got a whistle. Okay, so I'm going to take half of your hat and put it to him at the moment because it's on there. And Rhys, his idea that we need to change, needed to give the idea to change it, but it's still a good one. So next year, work out how we'll do it. So what do we get for Rhys? Okay. So we have two winners, gentlemen. I'm going to give it, it's a split decision because yours is really about the future and yours I could see happening. Yeah, bzzz, I could do it. Okay. There's 2 beers down there, right there. There's 2 beers. Map those. Hey, gentlemen, thank you very much. Thanks for gently taking us down and leaving us from DCD World. Thank you, everyone that assisted. We had a record audience yesterday. It's been a wonderful 2 days. Thanks.